you so much, Manny. Yes, so my name is Amanda Guthrie, and I work for the Auburn Technical Assistance Center, or better known as ATAC. We are outreach for the College of Business at Auburn University. War Eagle, especially to Kathy McGee, who said she's a Buckeyes fan. And I just recently got my master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology. And that's just a long term for the study of people at work. I'm not a work psychologist, but I do very interested in how people learn at work, the motivation, the engagement side, interactions between, work employees and getting work done and process improvement. And so with the lean side, I think most, or if not all of us, understand that the people aspect is super important when we're trying to put forth all of those continuous improvement activities. We need our folks to be on board, especially with the sustainability in any of those projects. So here to talk part 3 of emotional. So this session, this time, like I said, is this third of emotional intelligence. It's seeing beyond, mastering social awareness in emotional intelligence. That's my title. Let me move this out of the way. Let's see if I can. Okay, so just a little recap. What is emotional intelligence as a whole? There are 4 segments to it. Imagine that. So the ability to accurately assess your own and others' feelings and emotions, and use that assessment to guide intentional thinking and actions. Wouldn't it be great if everybody, especially in the workplace and at home, utilized this and had better emotional intelligence? I don't think we'd all get along better. So, as I said, we are in that third segment. If you look back, the first 2 were focusing more on self. So we have to know more about ourselves and regulate ourselves before we can move on to having relationships with other people. So that was the first half of the trainings that we did. So social awareness specifically, I believe in this quote here, Eckhart Tolle, awareness is the greatest agent for change. We have to know before we can change anything. So my definition of social awareness specifically is the ability to accurately pick up on the emotions of other people and understand what is really going on with them. And one of the first things that we'll look at is, anybody familiar with the DISC profile? It's one of many, 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 I guess you call it personality assessments. We call it behavior assessments. But if you want to throw in the chat any experience, or if you're familiar with the DISC, it's pretty common. Yes. So we do, oh, good. Yeah, in our experience, it's one of the better ones. It focuses more on behaviors, because we say personality you can't change, behaviors you can. And so if it's a behavior that you want to change, you can work towards changing those. But in general, what the assessment looks at is our preferred style. And so what that means is, this is how we prefer to, whatever it may be, this is our preferred style, our preferred behaviors, but we have the ability to stretch and flex and to go into other areas where it may seem fit to fit other people's styles, to have that better connection with them. And so in my doing the assessment myself, extremely accurate. So we spend a lot of time doing these classes like on its own, but I'm going to give you a brief overview of what it is, because it has a lot to do with social awareness. So in general, the DISC has 4 quadrants, and they are, as you see, dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. So to give you a quick overview of what each of those quadrants are, if you're familiar with the peanuts, you have Lucy over here, it's get it done, let's get to the point, right? And then for the I, the influence, it's get together, let's talk about it. So it's more the personal side, I want to get together, I like the collaboration. S for steadiness is, Charlie Brown. He wants to get along. I don't want to upset anybody. And then the conscientiousness, let's get it right. Let's hear more details. I like the accuracy. And if you notice on the outside edge of the circle, there are 8 priorities that the DISC lists out, that they say that typically the average person will have at least 3 of the top priorities, sometimes 4 and 5. But typically you have those 3. And that's how, when you take the assessment, it'll put a point on this graph to show, like, okay, where do you lay? But what we're going to do in looking at self-assessment, or we're going to call it people reading, is how can we be better at seeing it in other people, so that I know what maybe their preferred style is, and then I can flex my own style to meet theirs and have that better conversation and communicate better with those people. So this is, again, people reading, the first 2 steps to ask yourself when you're doing your assessment on the other person. And again, these slides will be available to y'all, and I could put this as a separate PDF as well, so you can use it, at least study it. I wouldn't pull it out like when the person is talking, but okay. So the first question to ask yourself, is this person, are they more fast-paced? They're really quick to make a decision and gung-ho, to do things, and outspoken. They're not afraid to, speaking loud and giving their opinion. Or are they more cautious and reserved? Do they like more details? Are they quieter? Do they need more time to make decisions? They don't like being asked right away, hey, what do you think? And in that aspect. So they're going to be the ones that ask a lot more questions. Maybe they're more monotoned. So if you look, the quadrants, like the up and down. So the top half, the DI, are the fast-paced and outspoken. And then the bottom half, the CS, are the cautious and reserved. So we'll be able to split that in half. And so then after that, then we ask, the second step. We go to, what's on the left and the right. Is this person more questioning and skeptical? And I'm not saying that as a negative thing, but again, are they more, let's say, process focused? Do they want to know, all the steps to, or understanding how the process works? We want to get things done. We want to achieve these things and whatnot. They're more plain spoken. They're focused more on the facts. On the other side, accepting and warm, these are the people oriented folks. And so they may be more boisterous, outspoken, louder, very expressive. They love working in teams. They care about the emotions. They're feeling oriented. So once we answer those 2 questions, we can get a broad idea of maybe where this person lies. And again, you're not stuck in like one segment, but overall we'll get a sense of where they're at. In a quick assessment of yourself, anybody want to share where they think they maybe lie in these quadrants? Tammy said she thought she thought the D was red. It maybe depends on who does the assessment. We use Wiley, so that's the coloring that they've used. That's me, Courtney. Okay, S. My dot was right at 9 o'clock. It's funny, our team has all done this assessment, and most of the team are all on the outer edges and all of the opposites, which is really funny. I'm close to the edge on the DI, and then I have one coworker that's really all the way on the edge of CD, and then my boss is the CS, and then my other coworker is more like on the edge but with the S, so it's funny. Cool. Thank you for your input. Okay, so then the third step moving forward, let's see. Combine the tendencies to determine the profile. So now we can look a little bit at each of the tendencies. As we start to focus and pay attention to the others around us and see what their tendencies are, we could ask ourselves, okay, is this person, do they always appear in a hurry? Are they perceived as aggressive? Again, a lot of this stuff is the perception of other folks. And if it seems like a very strong tendency to somebody, that's probably means that you're the opposite. So if there's a perception of aggressiveness and you think, wow, this person's really a jerk, they're always outspoken and they talk, that may be that you're on the opposite side. So that'd be a good indicator for yourself as well. They talk to a lot of people at the same time. What's the bottom line? So that would be the D. In general, again, of course, these are generalizations. The influence, friendly, talks a lot, easily excited, where good is great, bad is terrible. So you've got this sometimes exaggeration of emotions, not always paying close attention, don't care as much about the details, but really excited about that team and getting stuff done and working together. It's enthusiasm. So again, if you look at the center back at those 8 priorities, you'll see some that are the specific to the one quadrant, and then there's the overlap. So looking back at the D, which is the green, the D's, the dominants, you see their 3 are challenge, results, and action. If you're a strong D, those are your 3 top priorities. But as you go around, you see that the action is actually overlapped between D and I. So like with an I, their three top priorities are action, enthusiasm, and collaboration. Now, again, if you're really high on those three, let's say specifically action, enthusiasm, and collaboration, those are your three highest, your dot or that person's dot is going to be towards the edge because it's the extreme on those. But let's say yours is enthusiasm, collaboration, but then challenge. Where you land and these quadrants are going to be pulled closer towards the center because if you see the challenge is on the other side, and so again, it's pulling. So you have to keep in mind, again, not everybody you're not going to see the extreme, but sometimes you do. Moving on, the S is support or steadiness. They're usually very calm. These folks sometimes tend to get walked all over because they don't want to ruffle feathers or create any ripple effects. And they care very much so how it affects the team, how it affects the people. They do ask questions though, and they are very thoughtful. And then the C can appear reserved, maybe seen as timid or quiet, does not easily express disagreeing views, though. They'll usually keep quiet, but ask a lot of questions, but can be critical, but based on facts. They're very fact oriented. Another thing that we utilize with this, just to help better picture it, is that we use animals. And so for the D, we describe kind of the characteristics of a lion. And then the I, the characteristics you would think of a parrot, colorful, loud, friendly. The S, the Saint Bernard, loyal and calm, always there, there, cares about the people. And then the C, the owl, the wise, asks questions, very observant. So as we go through that, keep this in mind. So we are actually going to practice. I tried to do what animal is the I? Oh, a parrot. Colorful and talkative. Whoops. So we're going to practice that. So we're going to watch an example and we're going to talk through it, going through these steps after it.
I'm happy to help out. In fact, I was probably going to have to go over all that stuff anyhow. And speaking of which, I was wondering, could I get those printouts from you if it's not too much trouble? It's just that, if we don't get those requests in on time, then it throws Aaron off, and I really sort of wanted to give him some notice.
Okay, so hopefully you guys saw that or were able to see it and hear it. Let's go through the 3 steps, okay? So we have the first step. Do you think that she was fast-paced and outspoken, or maybe a little more cautious and reserved? Yeah, there's some hesitancy in there. Yeah, absolutely. We're all on the same page, I think. Okay, so next question then. Her focus, was it more I'm going to say process focused or people focused? Absolutely. People focused, right? She didn't want to bother anybody. She wanted to relook at it, but she didn't want to hinder how long it's going to take for the other person. Absolutely. So this person would be a S, right? And again, the examples are to the extreme to make it easy to practice for initially, but it might be harder to see in other people. But as you practice, you'll be able to pick up at least on things that you'll know and you'll see in those people and then repeat it in others. So it'll be easier. So the tendencies. She was nodding, pretty easygoing. Let's see, thoughtful because she was, thinking about the other people. Nods and goes along. Let's see, who's not really easily excited though. She just seemed very reserved. Okay, so we're gonna go on to the next one.
All right, I went ahead and compared these two, and I've got some serious reservations. A lot of these plans look like they make sense initially, but once you scratch beneath the surface, I found a number of problems. I think we need to go over these systematically because I was at the meeting and people were letting their excitement get the best of them. And that's why we're here. I don't think anyone's really sat down and analyzed these.
Okay, so, I missed I don't know where my other slide is. But if you look at looking at fast paced or maybe more cautious and reserved. We have a couple of fast paced, a couple of cautious and reserved. I'm thinking a little bit more on the cautious side, asking those questions, looking at the details, and I'm kind of giving it away, but then looking at the other side, more process focused or more people focused. Absolutely. Process. I think we all agree on that. She has the paper, she's looking at the report. Yeah, she was more direct for sure. But if you see it's fact-based, and it's looking at the report and saying like the C's are very focused on the accuracy. Yeah, high C, Tammy, absolutely. And so some of the comments, even, what are some of the comments do you remember that she said? One thing stands out to me, but of course I've seen this a million times. Did anything stand out to you that she said that gave it away other than the reports? Not sure anyone looked at the details. Absolutely. Letting your emotions get the best of them. Absolutely. So sometimes it's what they say about the other person or about other people that lets you know, it indicates where they are as well. So for sure, I would be that person that they would be annoyed at, because that's me. I get really emotional. I get excited about things and whatnot. So yeah. Tammy, do you find that sometimes people can be a D when confronted with higher Ds, then their C kicks in? If you don't believe me, I'll flood you with data. Yeah, so I think what happens a lot of times is that, again, we all have the natural tendencies, like where we prefer to be. But I think most of us have also flexed, maybe without even knowing it, because we have a lot of people that come in and say, like, well, I act this way at home, but I also act this way at work. And so I'm going to guess that at home, it's probably more of your natural, and at work, you've already learned to flex. And so, yeah, if somebody is in a room with higher Ds, they may feel the need to flex to that D style, but then also use that to their advantage and then say, like, here's all the facts to go with it. So, sure, that person is probably already flexing, I would say. Okay, and then looking at the tendencies we've already talked about.
A lot of people are saying really good things about your presentation. There's a lot of people that were really impressed, which got me thinking. I was wondering if you'd be willing to come in and give a talk for my team. I mean, they'd really love it, and it'd be a blast to have you there.
All right, so more fast-paced, outspoken, or cautious, reserved? Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, more process focused or more people focused? People. Yeah, so she is an I in this video for sure. What are some of the tendencies that you saw that would make you think that? It is the same actress every time. She does great. Deanna says she's me. Hand gestures. And that's really important too. It's not just about like the words and how she's saying it. You look at other things as well, more expressive with hands or the facial expressions. Good contact, not upsetting anyone. But it is too, obviously, about what they say. So how many times did she say the word really? A lot of people really liked it. Oh, they really love this and whatnot. Yeah, maybe even too enthusiastic. So Teresa, I'm such an I. Yeah, and so this is where that conflict comes into play. She was definitely, again, these examples are to the extreme to make it easy, but there are people like that, right? And so if you got to see and again, it's usually the opposite side. So like with an I, it's the C that you get maybe some of that head butting, because the C's are like, man, she was too enthusiastic. Whereas the S and the D may be like, well, she's a little more than me, but it's whatever. I have to edit down the use of exclamation. Yeah, I'm the same way too. Okay. So yeah, again, I don't know why I'm listing those first two. We went through it. Here's the next one.
Listen, I know how these things normally get done. First you have to have this meeting, then you have to have that meeting. Let's just do this. I mean, I can get this thing done by next month if I don't have to tinker around with every little detail. And I know that Sarah has the best of intentions, but like I told her yesterday, she has to keep things moving. I mean, I laid it all out for her, because the bottom line is, if we don't do this thing quickly, someone else is going to beat us to the punch.
Yeah, I'm always really impressed. She's a pretty good actress. Heidi, yeah, you stole the thunder. Yes, fast-paced, outspoken, but also more focusing on I want to get it done, the action, the challenge. Let's do this before everybody else does, whatnot. Wants to get things done, absolutely. But for those of us that are maybe more on the S side, sometimes that is a little intimidating. and can seem as like, oh, maybe they're a little bit of a jerk, or that sometimes that's what is perceived. And so even when we're looking at ourselves and where we're at, we have to be careful with those. I'm a DI. So I'm the one, I'm blunt. I'm like, I've got an opinion. I'll give it to you. If you don't like it, then I'm sorry. I don't want to offend you, but that's my opinion, and I like the challenge and whatnot, but sometimes I'll step on people's toes, or I talk a lot. So I think somebody's done talking and then I'll cut in, I'll interrupt on accident. So those are the things that, looking at the self part of it, I know and have learned and acknowledged, and that I have to work on myself. Okay. So why do we do all this? I wanted to start with this because as we start being aware of others, these are the things that we can start with, right? There's other parts to it. So what do I need to do? What else do I need to do to be more socially aware?
Yes.
Oh, there's another one. I'm so sorry.
Yes. I woke up at 2 a.m. last night with an idea about exactly the same thing. We should swap this stuff around. It's perfect. You know what? And we don't have to deal with all that paperwork. We can start cranking this stuff out, like maybe by next week. And you can handle all the web stuff because you're amazing at that. And you know what? I think we can turn this thing around by January. Yeah, I guarantee it. And I know people will get a little bit ruffled with the change, but I know these people. I can smooth it over. And if not, they can just get used to it, right? You know what? I think we should definitely do this.
All right. So what do you think? Yep. So definitely fast paced and outspoken, right? I think we can all agree on that. But there was a little bit of the I'm directing, this is what we should do. I like the challenge, let's do it. And then involving the other folks, but also very enthusiastic. So this person is definitely a DI. And so you get that mixture of the priorities. And with sometimes it could be a confusing, Sarah, about there's some S in there because she did focus on like how it's going to affect the people. But then if you listen to what the response was, instead of being hesitant, it was more of a, okay, well, if it does offend the people, it's fine. It'll be fine, or I'll smooth it over. And so there's those things that as we practice, we'll start to see the difference, little nuances. Okay. Has anybody heard of 7 Habits? Cubby's 7 Habits for Highly Effective People? Yes, some of you. Oh, favorite book? Absolutely. So one thing that has, for us talking about being socially aware is seek to understand. Oh, Sarah, it's a great book. It's pretty intense, though. Somebody already talked about this training being intense. Seek to understand. I think most people, or maybe I should ask the audience, would you say that most people's automatic is not seek to understand, but seek to be understood? Excuse me. Yeah, I've not looked at the research, but in general, I would think that as we communicate and interact with folks, that a lot of the time that's more about making sure that we're being understood, which is important. But the first thing we need to do is to understand the other person, because sometimes we're missing it and then the whole thing gets thrown off, especially nowadays, like politics and everything. I don't want to go there, but I think there's a lot of that going on. So what do we do? How do we seek to understand? Assessing the whole picture, or assessing the situation, which includes looking at the whole picture. Do I have all the information that I need to appropriately assess what's going on, right? With that, do I have any biases, or does that person maybe have any biases if I already know them fairly well when it comes to this situation? If it does have to do with politics, obviously there may be some biases involved, but not just that. We talked about in the first couple of sessions about our biases, and we create biases based on previous experiences and our involvement in those previous experiences, whatever that may be. And it's not necessarily a negative thing. It's just that those biases are how we look at certain situations. Example, I had a client tell us one time that she went into a session, CPR training with her company. When the instructor started to show how to do the compressions, she got really upset and had to leave the room. She didn't know why. She realized that she had an incident that happened recently with her father, had a heart attack, and she saw the paramedics have to do CPR. Stuff that can be really personal may affect other people or ourselves, and we have no idea. Sometimes we'll never know, especially as in the other person. But that's why it's so important to try to pay attention to those things. What we can do is, of course, in ourself more so, what biases do I have, do I bring to this picture based off of my previous experiences? And is that going to negatively affect whatever is going on? And then what goes hand in hand, looking from their point of view. You may not agree with how they feel, but trying to see it from their point of view. And we don't have to agree, right? Especially as leaders, supervisors, we don't have to agree, but we do have to acknowledge. We don't have to validate. We don't have to say that they're right, but we have to acknowledge the other person's feelings because that is how they are. That is their thing. And we can't change that in that person. So we should at least acknowledge that and then from there be able to move on. Another thing that we've kind of already talked about, though, is looking at the body language and tone, but then also eliminating distractions. Can you give me a couple of examples of distractions that y'all maybe have when you're trying to interact with folks? The cell phone, playing with your hair, yeah, getting things done. Jody, when you say getting things done, how does that distract you? Like, what is it that is making you lose that focus? When other people interrupt you, checking emails, bad listening. Ooh, that was David, thinking of what I need to do next. That's for me, like with getting things done. I have a really bad, again, it's me personally, awareness, right? In my mind, I go elsewhere. I'm either thinking about what I want to say next, or I totally check out, right? What do I need to buy at the store later, right? Let me make sure I didn't. Oh, Fitbit watch. Yeah. Now it's not even just like in our purse or in our back pocket. It's right on our wrist. Room noise. Let's see what else. The fast-paced dynamic of the work environment. That is so true, Sarah. Like, because that's so common now. And I think a lot of the times what I've seen in companies is that most cultures are created around the fact that we can interrupt our people whenever we want. And for productivity, that's terrible. And yeah, it's definitely so hard. And so this little side note, how can I carve out some time where I say, hey, this maybe 15 minutes, like I don't want to be interrupted unless it's uber important. And can we create a culture where we have some of that time to not be interrupted, to focus on something, that we need to put, all of our time into? Sorry. More than one priority. We have all of that, right? We've thinking about all the different things. Noise for sure. Short attention span or instant message emails. Yeah, depending on the work, where you work, I get that sometimes you have to hear those emails or whatever. But in my experience, like if you're in a work setting or you're in a role where people have to get a hold of you in urgent situations, do they typically email you or do they usually either call you or if they're there, just like walk in? Like, are emails ever a way that are used for urgent things? Yeah. Few responses, face-to-face call. So what I tell folks when we talk about productivity is that if email is not generally the way that people use if they need you right then, turn off those alerts that pop up on your screen. Because I'll be working on something else and then that thing pops up or it dings and then I'm like, ooh, what is that? And every time that happens, it's distracting me. And if we have somebody face to face, it's an automatic thing that we've learned the Pavlov response, right? We hear that ding or we kind of see it out of the corner of our eye and we look and now we've taken our focus off that person, right? So if we can eliminate that, and then with your phone, just get into the habit of maybe turning down silent or something that's a little bit less distracting, right? And then of course we talk about active listening. So if we can eliminate some of those things to better focus, now we can listen. What do we do? How do we actively listen? Ask clarifying and open-ended questions. And we'll go into this a little bit more. But when we start asking questions and we have to focus on what they're saying to be able to ask those questions, we're more likely to retain it and then understand it as well. And then confirming feelings, and we'll talk a little bit more about that too. So there's another thing that I differentiate active listening and empathetic listening. To me, empathetic listening is like a next level. And so active listening is something that we want to do. Like we just want to pay attention, right? We want to hear what the person's saying, understand what they're saying. Empathetic listening is also when there are emotions involved. And so at work, there's a lot of times when information is being given that it's not emotionally charged. So we definitely want to actively listen and get the full picture, ask questions, make sure we understand. But then, especially in conflict instances or whatnot, we need to take it to another level. Maybe there needs to be a little bit more time and effort put into that to make sure that we resolve the situation. And so you would include all the things with active listening. And so what's with empathetic listening? Reflecting what a person feels and says in your own words with the intent to understand, right? So we talked about being attentive, but don't discounting the feelings. Like I said, they feel the way they feel. Act like a mirror, periodically check, like I said, ask questions or make sure that you're understanding what they're saying. It's hard when there's emotions involved sometimes to get hooked. So we start judging in a way that we're like, oh, I wouldn't feel that way, or why they feel that way, right? And then not making assumptions. So making sure that we know the facts and that we understand the perspective without any assumptions. Listen to what not is said, paying attention to the person's body language expression, and fill it up. Let that person talk. Let's say what they have to say before I interrupt. Fill it up like a sponge. We say listen like a sponge. And then what do we do with the sponge too? We wring it out. So then give it back to them. Make sure that we are understanding fully and listening from their point of view. And let me see this. So here is an example of the empathetic listening.
First, there was PlayStation, aka PS1. Then there's PS2, PS3, and now PS4. And that makes sense. You'd think after Xbox, there'd be Xbox 2. But no. Next came Xbox 360. And now, after 360, comes Xbox One. Why one? Maybe that's how many seconds of thought they put into naming it.
Can you get the butter, please?
Yeah. However, with the Xbox One, I can control my entire entertainment system using voice commands. Up until now, I've had to use Leonard.
Then get the other one. Pass the butter.
I don't feel like you're taking this dilemma seriously.
Fine, Sheldon. You have my undivided attention.
Okay, now, the PS4 is more angular and sleek looking.
No way!
It's true. But the larger size of the Xbox One may keep it from overheating.
You wouldn't want your gaming system to overheat?
No, you absolutely would not. And furthermore, the Xbox One now comes with a Kinect included. Yes! Not sold separately. Although the PS4 uses cool new GDDR5 RAM, while the Xbox One is still using the conventional DDR3 memory.
Oops.
Why would they still be using DDR3? Are they nuts?
See, that's what I thought. But then they go and throw in an ES RAM buffer.
Oh, who's they?
The Xbox.
You're kidding!
No, I am not. And this ES RAM buffer should totally bridge the 100 gigabit per second bandwidth gap between the two RAM types.
This is a nightmare. How will you ever make a decision?
See, I don't know. What should I do?
Please pass the butter!
Anybody familiar with the Big Bang Theory? So Sheldon there doesn't usually recognize sarcasm. So other than the sarcasm, what did Amy do to show that she was listening empathetically? She repeated back. Yeah, reflective listening. The interaction for sure. Responding enthusiastically, Francisco, thank you so much for saying that. I was going to say that I think I missed a bullet point on the empathetic listening, matching the emotion. And so in this scenario, obviously he was super enthusiastic about it or excited about it. And so she matched that. But we have to be careful to make sure that we match that. And so if it's an enthusiastic session, try to be a little bit more upbeat. But if it's something where there's more sad or somber emotions, we want to tone it down, especially if we're typically more of an I. Not that we're going to laugh if somebody's crying, but just trying to match or get closer to that person's where they're at. And so it helps to create this sense of connection with the folks. She stopped everything she was doing. Yes, she stopped what she was doing. She looked straight at him. She was reflective, matched his emotions. And what can we do to add more of that into our interactions? But also, it's important to understand when to listen empathetically, because it's time consuming and it can be stressful, right? It's a lot of energy that goes into it. And so we don't always have to empathetically listen. I feel like we should always actively listen, but what do? We watch for the signals, right? And so normal conversation, actively listening, basically there's no heightened emotions, right? But if at any point during a conversation it does start to shift to where there's a little bit more heightened emotions, whether high or low, then maybe we need to slow down and start thinking about, okay, what do I need to do? How can I reflect more empathetically with that person? And then sometimes, like the tips say, we need to focus on the intent. So what are we trying to get at? What are we trying to do in this situation? We want to connect with that person. So sometimes I think internally, for me at least, I want to say the right thing to make it better, or, to just in general say the right thing to go along with it. But it's not always about that. It's showing the other person that you're taking the time to understand them. And so looking at what that intent is. And don't be afraid of silence. A lot of people struggle with that. I've learned in trainings that I struggled with it before, but when I ask a question, sometimes I don't get a response right away. I have learned to pause so that because other people don't like the silence, and somebody will usually give a response. Auditors love uncomfortable silences. I'm not sure what their intent is on that, if it's the same as with a trainer, but I love that engagement, that interaction, but sometimes I'll just have to pause because you get in rooms where nobody wants to speak up. But when we're interacting with folks one-on-one, if the emotions are high, again, we need to make sure they get it all out before we interrupt them. So even if that means they need a moment to complete whatever it is that they're thinking of. So if you have trouble confirming how a person feels, or you think that you need practice in that area, this is just a super generic way to start with, to practice. It may not be structured in a way that you would normally say, but to start practicing with that, acknowledging those feelings within, this is an example of something that you can use. Just say, it sounds like you're feeling, or you're blank, right? Where you put the feeling there, because, or about, and then put the fact. So now not only do you have the facts, feelings are facts to that person again. So you're adding that next level, that next element, to where they can feel acknowledged. And I think we all, as people, want to feel acknowledged. And then from there, we can move on, or, do whatever it is that we need to do. And so we'll go through one practice example. And let's say that you have a person, maybe a coworker or something, that's coming up to you and saying this to you. I know we need to negotiate the agreement with our supplier, but I've never met with them before. They've always worked with George, not me. So what could you put as an example in for that feeling and that fact? And there's not a right or wrong answer on this, because it's even the way that it's said, the tone, there probably could be nervous because of the unknown. Absolutely. Worried. Sounds like you feel uncomfortable because you don't know the person. Apprehensive. Unsure because it's new, uncomfortable. Yeah, it definitely, all of that in there. If I said it like, they've always worked with George, not me, it could have been more of like, I don't know, I don't want to use the word jealous, but there's that I felt like maybe I should have worked with the person a little bit. So again, tone is really important. So just to fill it in, sounds like you're unsure about renegotiating because the supplier doesn't know you. Basically what everybody has already said. So again, a simple way to try to start mirroring back the information, those feelings, acknowledging the feelings within it as well. And, we could practice more different examples. If you want to contact me, I've got a whole list of them that you can come up with or whatnot. And trying to think, other than that, that is it for my presentation, I think. Yep. And let's see, what time is it? 12:51. So we have 9 minutes. I'd love to continue the interaction if anybody has any questions or comments. Like I said, I'm going to be doing these webinars online. If you want to contact me, we can set something up for that. If you want to do it, in a group setting, or like I said, a lot of this stuff I also expand on the disc. I do a whole class for it. It includes an assessment where you learn about yourself and then how you interact with others. Really scary, usually really scary, true, like accurate. When I read it, I was like, ooh, this is, who's looking at me? Like it's pretty scary. But any questions, any comments anybody has? Where can I find a good disc program? Well, Manny and I both do them. And so we have, right, like, do you use Wiley, Manny, or who is it that you get your assessments through?
I don't actually. I have a quick assessment.
Oh, you do a quick assessment. Okay.
That I use. Yeah. So
Okay.
obviously, if you go through one of the established vendors, you're going to get a much more detailed report. But I do a quick and dirty one that we can talk about in 45 minutes. So it's not the same level of detail. Let's put it that way.
So it's how you want to look at it, I guess. Manny does the quick and dirty. I do a little bit. It's a 4-hour training, but it includes an online assessment. They catered the questions based off of how you've answered other questions. It's a 20-page report about yourself and how you interact with others. So it depends on, how you want to look at that. There are, free ones. I'm actually trying to research to finding free ones right now, and I'm frustrated because a lot of them says they're free, and then you go through the whole thing answering the questions, and then it says, oh, pay $5 or $10, subscribe. I'm like, oh, it's not free. Yeah, there are several online. You just got to find the right one. And a lot of times, again, what you'll find is that the questions stay the same. And so if there's 50 questions, they still give you a good report, but it's usually not as detailed as the online assessment because, again, they cater the questions or they shift the questions based on how you already answered the other ones just to make sure that they're getting, the right information. Any general advice for and C with a very D boss? Well, Haley and I guess general may have to learn to speak up. Are you in a situation? I don't know if you're going to call you out, but most of the times being afraid of feelings or getting their feelings hurt, they'll kind of just step back and remove themselves. Ds actually do appreciate even if you butt heads, like they appreciate the interaction, like the actually speaking up, even if they don't agree with you, they prefer for you to just say it. And so, but then also dealing with the feeling side of it, because the S is on the feeling side and the D is not as much, it's just trying to have that perspective in yourself to say they're just different. And that's how they are. They're not meaning to be this way. Some people are, but in general, the D style, when you talk to them, they're like, I don't mean to be a jerk. I'm saying a fairly nicer word, but that's just my style. I'm not trying to offend you. That's just how I come across. So just kind of telling yourself like how to go into it the next time. Like it's not personal. It's not supposed to be personal. Again, there are people out there that are jerks. I mean, sometimes bosses are jerks. So I don't, in this situation, but that's just my style. I'm not trying to offend you. That's just how I come across. So just kind of telling yourself like how to go into it the next time. Like it's not personal. It's not supposed to be personal. Again, there are people out there that are jerks. I mean, sometimes bosses are jerks. So I don't, in this situation, but.
I was going to say we're at the top of the hour, so I'm sure people are going to be dropping off if they haven't already. So I don't mind staying on a little bit longer, but I did at least want to close it out as far as the recording goes. So,
yeah.
All right, folks. Hey, you can spend your time in a lot of ways. We appreciate you spending the last hour with us. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're calling in from. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye now.